Welcome to WorldView Today, a high-stakes bet in global politics. In a daring gamble that could reshape the geopolitical landscape, Ukraine has abruptly turned its back on a multi-billion-dollar mineral deal with the United States, defying President Donald Trump's vision of a golden opportunity and risking the wrath of a superpower. Welcome to WorldView Today, where we uncover the stories driving the world's most critical developments. The unexpected reversal. Ukraine's sudden withdrawal from the mineral agreement, once hailed by President Trump as a cornerstone of his America First strategy, has sent shockwaves through Washington. The deal, negotiated over months, promised the U.S. unprecedented access to Ukraine's rare earth resources, lithium, titanium, and uranium, vital for high-tech industries and national defense. For Trump, this was more than an economic pact. It was a means to offset the $20 billion in aid the U.S. has poured into Ukraine since Russia's military campaign began in 2022. Trump's fury and threats. On March 30, 2025, aboard Air Force One, President Trump did not mince words. If he does that, he's going to have big problems, very big problems, he warned, targeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's decision to abandon the deal. Trump's transactional approach views U.S. aid not as charity, but as an investment demanding repayment, preferably through Ukraine's natural wealth. The proposed terms required Kyiv to funnel 50% of its resource revenues into a U.S.-controlled joint investment fund, alongside a 4% annual interest rate on the aid debt, a condition Ukraine flatly rejected. Ukraine's defiance stand. In a March 28 address, President Zelenskyy made Ukraine's position clear. Nothing that damages Ukraine's prospects of joining the EU can be accepted. For Kyiv, the U.S. deal threatened its economic sovereignty and its ambitions to integrate with Europe. Zelenskyy insisted that American aid should not come with strings that bind Ukraine to repay it through its resources. The terms, which would grant Washington oversight of Ukraine's mining projects, clashed with EU standards requiring prospective members to retain independent control over their natural assets. A geopolitical tightrope. Ukraine's rejection carries monumental risks. By spurning the deal, Kyiv could lose vital U.S. support, weakening its hand against Russia and emboldening Moscow in the ongoing conflict. Trump has even floated the idea of partnering with Russia on mineral extraction, a stunning pivot that could isolate Ukraine further and redraw regional power dynamics. Following a March 18th call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Trump remarked, "Russia has vast rare earth reserves, and we want to expand trade with them," a statement that rattled NATO allies and underscored his willingness to sideline Ukraine for economic gain. The EU dream and a calculated risk, Zelenskyy's refusal is not an outright dismissal of cooperation with the U.S., but a bid to renegotiate terms that preserve Ukraine's autonomy. Kyiv has proposed amendments, urging greater U.S. investment in mining infrastructure and clearer fund management rules. Yet this defiance has tested Trump's patience, with the U.S. leader accusing Zelenskyy of stalling. For Ukraine, caught between Russia's aggression, financial dependence on the West, and its EU aspirations, this is a high-stakes play. Rejecting the deal may signal strength, but it risks alienating the U.S. at a time when military and financial aid remain lifelines. A fragile future. The fallout is already reverberating. Russia, controlling resource-rich Ukrainian territories like Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia, stands ready to exploit the rift, with Putin offering cooperation to foreign partners. Meanwhile, the EU, while supportive of Ukraine politically, lacks the resources to fully replace U.S. aid if Trump scales back support, a scenario he has hinted at with threats of economic pressure or military cutbacks. Ukraine's gamble could either cement its sovereignty or leave it stranded between superpowers. How Ukraine's rejection of the deal impacts its EU accession process. Ukraine's decision to reject a minerals agreement with the United States carries both direct and indirect consequences for its path toward EU integration. Conflict with EU standards. The agreement stipulated that resource projects be channeled through a U.S.-controlled fund, a condition that clashes with EU regulations. These rules require prospective member states to retain independent control over their natural resources. Accepting the deal would have complicated Ukraine's efforts to align with the EU's legal framework later on. Warnings from Europe. Some EU leaders, such as German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, have criticized Trump-style transactional policies as self-serving. However, Ukraine's rejection of the U.S. deal has prompted the EU to reassess its aid strategy, given its inability to fully replace the financial and military support provided by the United States. Challenges in filling the gap if U.S. withdraws. Should the Trump administration scale back aid, Ukraine would lean more heavily on the EU. At a time when countries like Germany and France are showing signs of fatigue over support costs and lack the resources to fully compensate for any U.S. withdrawal. This could make the EU more hesitant to admit a potentially unstable prospective member. What Trump could do if Ukraine refuses to compromise. If Ukraine persists in rejecting cooperation on the minerals agreement, Donald Trump, known for his deal-maker approach, has several powerful levers and assertive options at his disposal. Threat of major repercussions. Trump has publicly warned that if Zelenskyy pulls out of the deal, Ukraine will face big trouble, a clear hint at potential sanctions, economic pressure, or aid cuts. Reduction of military and financial aid. Trump could opt to scale back or entirely withdraw support, particularly as he views the $120 billion in U.S. assistance as a burden that demands compensation. Partnering with Russia. In a striking move, Trump has expressed readiness to collaborate with Russia, America's and NATO's traditional rival, on rare earth mining, following a meeting with President Putin. This pragmatic yet provocative step would significantly ramp up pressure on Ukraine. Multilateral political pressure. By doubling down on his America First policy, Trump could push allies like the EU to reconsider their roles, potentially isolating Ukraine if it refuses to comply. Why Ukraine refuses to repay U.S. aid with resources. Ukraine's rejection of repaying U.S. aid through its natural resources stems from a mix of strategic and political considerations. Aid not seen as a loan. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has emphasized that U.S. assistance was provided as support, not a loan requiring repayment. Using resources to settle the debt is perceived as undermining Ukraine's sovereignty and the value of its partnership with the U.S. safeguarding economic autonomy. The proposed deal would allocate 50% of resource revenues to an investment fund partially controlled by the U.S., infringing on Ukraine's control over its national assets. This conflicts with EU standards, mandating independent resource management, a critical requirement for Ukraine's EU accession process. Fear of becoming America's resource colony. Amid war-damaged infrastructure, Ukraine worries that ceding resources to the U.S. would reduce it to a resource colony, offering little tangible benefit to its people. Maintaining balanced relations. The refusal also reflects Ukraine's effort to balance ties with the U.S. and the EU, while asserting its national stance amid the geopolitical rivalry between the U.S. and Russia. As this drama unfolds, one question looms large. Can Ukraine navigate this treacherous path without burying itself in the process? At WorldView today, we'll keep you informed as this geopolitical chess match plays out, with the stakes higher than ever.